Hi, welcome to my blog. My name is Tom Shue, and today we're going to talk about exposing to the right and why you might want to do it, and we'll do a little bit of post-processing. In this image, you can see it was shot in the middle of the day. This image was exposed with a normal exposure. You can see in the histogram there's no black clipping, and the highlight detail just doesn't exist. Everything was shoved to the middle, the R, G, and the B. This is where the exposure took place. Well, there's a system called expose to the right, and what it's designed to do is use your histogram as a tool to judge exposure and luminance exposure. This gray area is the luminance values. This means the amount of light that's coming into the sensor of the camera to create the file. It tells you where you are from 0 to 255. Okay, that's how many shades of from white to black shades of gray have you in a file. That's how they look at things when they do it, and 18% being a neutral value would be in somewhere in the middle. Lightroom uses 50 to 100, so if you see these values where it says 50, if you go into like the average of the screen, it's going to give you the average exposure, what it was shot at. So seeing that it's a standard exposure, it's going to be roughly in the middle of the histogram where all the information lives. It's real easy to create blacks, but it's hard to recover if information is black. If it's completely black, there's just no information to recover from. So let's go over and look at this file. It's the same file, except this file is exposed to the right. So if we grab our histogram and hover, you'll see that the middle value is not 18% anymore, or in the middle of the histogram. It's reading in the 80s, which would be like a third over. The idea about exposing to the right, you want to look at your histogram and you don't want to clip it. Means that you don't want to clip the high value or the whites. You don't want to clip any of the color information. And here we see that the red, green, and blue channels, they're not clipped at all. If they were shoved to the right, say I'll show you what it would look like if it was clipped. If we shove the exposure over, let's grab these whites and grab them over. This would be clipped. All the information is shoved to the right, and if we put on the highlight warning, you can see that it's clipped. So let's recover that and bring it back down. So this is grabbing exposure, and we'll pull it back down. But you'll notice over in the whites that the clipping's still taking place. So if we pull this over to the left, we can eliminate clipping. Let me show you how easy it is to add blacks to an image. So if we go over and grab the blacks, and we want to grab and create a black, we can just slide it over and make a black. However, if you capture the image and you try to create midtones and high values, you can't do it. When you grab and slide the blacks over like this, it's called crushing the blacks, or creating a black point. So let's go ahead and reset this, and I'll show you the benefit of exposing to the right. And we can maintain a lot of detail by doing so. So first we're going to come in and we'll set a normal exposure on this image. I'm going to come in, and I know Lightroom bakes in about 1 stop extra of exposure when you bring the file in. I don't know why it does it, but with my camera it seems to be about 1 stop. So I'm going to minus 1 stop of exposure, and I'm going to minus 35% on contrast. Now this to me looks more like what the image looked like when I shot it. If you see that everything's roughly in the middle, the same as before, but the idea is all the information is in the file. Nothing's clipped, nothing is lost. So we'll come down here and we'll hold the Alt key and we'll set a white point. So by holding the Alt key, you'll notice nothing's clipped in the whites, and we'll bring it over and we'll create a white point. And if you notice that histogram over here, it's starting to push the red, green, and blue and the luminance value. If you look at this gray slider, as soon as it starts to climb up that wall, when it hits to the top, it's completely clipped. So we'll move this over to the right, and you can see that the blue channel is starting to clip and the luminance channel is starting to clip. You can see it start to creep up the wall. If you look closely, you'll see a little gray bar and a blue bar climbing up the wall, and that's what this represents over here. So we'll continue to push it over, and you'll see blue and white climbing up the wall. The blue just clipped completely, and there's the luminance value clipping, and then there's the rest of the blue clipping. So we'll back this off. I just did that just for demonstrative purposes. So we'll bring this down somewhere in this area. Okay, so now we have a white point set. I can turn these highlight warnings off. I don't need to see them. I can see my histogram, what's happening. So I'm going to go down and we're going to set a black point. We're going to hold the Alt key and we're going to drag our blacks down. And I'm going to take a peek at the image and see where black would live, maybe in the shadow of these bushes. You know, obviously that the road is kind of not black, it's more of a gray color. So we're not going to be able to, you know, use that as a black point. We don't want that to be a black point because the whole image would be too dark. So we'll bring this blacks down into this point. Okay, now that we've set a black point and a white point, we can adjust these other controls. The highlights and shadows. The highlights controls are only going to affect the highlights. They're not going to affect the shadow detail. So watch what happens if I slide it to the right. Only the highlights get increased. It's not affecting the shadows. So we'll reset that by double-clicking highlights. And on the shadow slider, it's not going to affect the highlights. It's only going to affect the shadows. And I'll double-click to bring that back to the center. So I want to see what's happening if I clip them. So I'm going to bring these shadows down, and you can see that it's already clipped in the black areas. So I can recover from some of that if I like in the shadows. You see? Okay, and then the highlights, I can also judge what's clipped, and I can reduce some of that. So this is like a fine control over the image. So there you have a quick demonstration on how you would expose to the right and gain proper exposure after you shoot. And again, the benefit to exposing to the right is to maintain all of the detail that's possible in the image. If you clip it, it's not there. If you expose to the right and you ensure you don't shoot past your histogram and clip any of the detail on the high side, it's easy to crush the blacks, just like this. There we have blacks. So I hope you learned something today, and I thank you for coming to my blog. Again, my name is Tom Shue, and I hope you have a great day.